Okay. So yes, have a lie on your back. And feel how you're meeting the floor today. Feel if you'd like to adjust the level behind your head. And what's one way we can decide on that if we're not sure? Um, have just like a normal breath and in and out, and feel where your breath is going in, which parts of the abdomen and the chest, where do you feel the breath going in? And now try a slightly different height for under your head, unless you feel super comfortable and you think that's just right. But it would be nice to discover options. And do the same thing, breath in, out. What's more comfortable, what you had before or what you're having now? So as you're lying there, start feeling the spaces between you and the floor. Spaces just above your heels, spaces behind your knees, maybe some space between your low back and the floor. How big or small is that space? Is it different on the left side or on the right side? And space behind your neck, between your neck and the floor. You can even reach with one hand and feel now the space. And get a general sense, once you are done feeling your neck, get a general sense of how even or uneven you perceive your contact with the floor. Start scanning from your right side, so right heel to right knee to right hip to right shoulder to even right side of the head. How does this whole line feel? This whole side? Does it feel like, where is your right shoulder in relation to the right side of your pelvis? And now come to bring your attention to your left side. So feel how your left heel is and the relationship between your left heel and your knee, left knee, up to left hip joint or just left side of your pelvis. How are they lying? And going up left side of the chest, left shoulder, and left side of your neck and left side of your head. Feel how your ribs are contacting the floor in general. How much of the lower ribs are you able to locate? Are they completely off the floor? Are they touching a little bit? Is one side touching more than the other? And just get a sense of the whole of yourself, your spine, your tail. Get a sense of your two shoulder blades. How is your left shoulder blade in the floor? How is your right shoulder blade different or similar to it? And get a sense of your breathing once more. Is it more in your chest or more in your abdomen? How far up your chest do you sense your breath come in? Or does it stop somewhere in the middle or lower? And now slowly roll to your left side. And you can adjust how much you have under your head. You might want to add something. And I'll wait for a moment. You can check that you're still able to roll your head a little bit, but it's also not feeling like it's dropping down from the rest of you. And certainly if your left shoulder feels too squished, it might be a sign that you need to add something. You decide. So now that you're on your left side, with your knees bent, have your right hand somewhere in front of you with your elbow bent. And start taking the right side of your pelvis a little bit forward and a little bit back. In other words, start taking your right hip a little bit forward and a little bit back. And continue doing that. And you can experiment for yourself. If you have your right hand standing in front of you, like the palm on the floor, supporting you underneath your other arm, does that change at all the movement in your pelvis? Does it become easier? Or if you have your arm on the other side, if you have your right hand on the other side, or anywhere else, just decide what's more comfortable for you. And something else you can try is change where your knees are. So if you push them slightly farther away from your head, just like a degree or two, really, how does that change the movement of your hip forward and back? So you can try a couple of different places for your bent knees. So choose the place where it's easiest to roll your pelvis forward and back. And now notice as you are moving your pelvis, is there a little bias? Does it go a little bit up towards your head, forward, let's say, or down? Or is it a completely straight line? So notice your bias here. And just go for a couple of times with the least resistance, where you go with least resistance. And now try to make it a straight line. So really forward and back, straight line. And notice, what would you have to include more in yourself, of yourself? Can you get some help in your chest to do that? In your spine? What else can come along to help out to make it a straighter line? And now stop that. And put your right arm on your side, along your side. Wrist would be kind of hanging on your hip there. And start taking your shoulder forward and back. Notice if there's a bias here. If you want to go up or down. And also notice the quality of the movement. Is it easy to go forward? Or is it a stopping and starting kind of movement? And how does it feel to go back compared to going forward? And come back to feeling the bias of direction. And now try to make your shoulder go into a straight line forward and back. How would you do that? Can something in your upper chest get more involved and help you out? What other bits in yourself can you find to help you out? Is your head a little bit involved? Or is your chin moving in some way as you do that? And now bring your hand back on the floor as you had it before. And come back to the same movement at the pelvis, forward and back. Did this become different somehow now? Did it get a little easier? Or just a little more fluid? Or did the movement become bigger just because you can? And go on your back. You can adjust if your head is too high now. and compare the two sides. Find out how your right shoulder feels, your rib cage on the right side. Has anything changed in your breathing? And come back to the same side. With your right hand standing. Just in a way that supports you, but no extra work in the right hand if possible. And now start taking your pelvis a little bit up and a little bit down. A little bit up towards your shoulder and a little bit away from the shoulder. And feel what your ribs might be doing on the right side as your pelvis comes up. They would be closing a little bit. And then when you go down with your pelvis, it might be opening a little bit. And notice now if the movement of the pelvis is a straight line, or does it feel like it's not quite a straight line? Going up, you go a little bit in one direction, going down a little bit in another direction. Where does your pelvis want to go? Notice if your up and down movement is really a little bit of has a bit of a forward and back to it, basically. And what about the other side of the ribs? Your left ribs, what is happening there? As your pelvis comes up, they probably open just a little bit to accommodate the other side coming together just a little bit. And now stop the pelvis. And have, once again, your arm on your side. And start moving your shoulder a little bit towards your ear and a little bit away from your ear. I say a little bit, but you can do what feels good and what feels nice, and you can go where you'd like to explore. And notice if there's a tendency here to go a little bit forward and a little bit back within your up and down. Where does your shoulder like to go? And again, how would you make it a straight line? How would your head help you? Or your ribs, your upper ribs? Something in your whole chest, maybe even. And stop that. Come back to your pelvis and come back to taking it up and down. and notice if something has changed here. Has something gotten easier about this movement? Has what we did with the shoulders somehow made the pelvis move more easily? And in general, where do you notice moving more of yourself? Maybe more ribs and vertebrae are involved. And come back to your back. How do you feel your two sides? Is there possibly more continuity of your right side? Or use whatever words you want to describe the feeling. Come back to your left, same side. And now imagine that there's a clock under your pelvis. And start moving your pelvis gently through the numbers of the clock. So 12 o'clock would be up towards your ear, and then 1 would be forward, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is back, 10, 11, 12. So do that 1 or 2 more times. And notice which numbers are more accessible or less accessible. At every number, notice how all of you needs to adapt just a little bit to reach that number and really account for that number. And now reverse direction. Again, going through the numbers. With a soft chest, front of the chest, back of the chest. And stop for a moment when you're ready. And now you're going to stop a little bit at each number to give yourself the time to feel. So 12, 1, 2, 3 is forward, and continue. So give yourself the time to feel what you do with yourself at each number. I may have counted them a bit fast earlier. What happens with your chest? Are you still breathing? Or are you very focused on each number that you forgot to breathe? And now reverse the direction. 12, 11. Where does your head go? Or where would it like to go if you let it? Is your neck involved? Are you breathing easy? And stop that. And put your arm along your side. Do a couple of circles with the arm, just to get a feel how circular or non-circular your circles are. And now do it with numbers of the clock. So 12 towards your ear, 1 forward, 2, 3, 4. Stopping just a little bit at each number. Letting yourself breathe freely, or reminding yourself that breathing might help. And now change direction. 12, 11. What is your ear also making some kind of a shape in space? Maybe a little circle there too. Sense how your lower side, ribs and down, is adaptable to this shoulder circle. And stop that and come to your back. Feel your two sides. What new changes may have occurred? How do you sense yourself? Come to the same side. Have your arm along your side. And now we're going to do a hip and shoulder circle in the same direction. So take your hip and your shoulder up towards 12, towards your ear. Slowly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And continue one more time, accounting for each number. feeling how your left side is adapting and helping you. Your attention is divided between your shoulder and your hip, moving simultaneously. And now add the navel. The navel is a little bit below the belly button. So take that as a primary point of attention now. 70% attention on the navel, 30 on the rest of you, or on the shoulder and hip. And now your navel is doing a clock. And if that's very unfamiliar for you to think about, you can put your right index on your navel, if that helps. Feel almost as if the navel is initiating the movement. Maybe spreading your attention in this way is helping reduce some of the effort of making the circle. How is all of you going in a circle? Your ribs. Are your ribs making some kind of a clock too against the floor? Your ear, maybe? Your left ear, you might feel making a circle. And when you're ready, you can come to your back one more time. How do you sense your two sides? How do you sense your breathing? And now, surprise, surprise, roll to your right side. Which is hopefully softer by now, meeting the floor much more willingly. And start making a circle with your left shoulder, gently. Feel the numbers of the clock. Recognize if you're hitting some roadblocks along the way. Maybe some of the ribs are not just yet ready to come and help out. Keep your arms straight, of course, but not with strain. Is your breathing free? How are the different numbers of the clock? Are they equally accessible? And change the direction. Does it seem easier for the ribs to come along in this direction? Or quite the opposite? They're less familiar with this direction? Which side of your ribs is more present for you right now? The side that's touching the floor or the side under your moving arm? And stop that. And now do a clock with your pelvis. So your arm, your left arm would be supporting you a little bit in front of you. So pelvis coming up to the ear, 12, forward 1, 2, 3, continue. Notice how much of you is involved in this movement. Notice if your head is coming along, your chin. What kind of a shape is your chin making in space? Or your nose? And reverse the direction. 12, 11, 10. Is this more familiar or more challenging? Is there a quadrant that is particularly non-circular? Just to recognize it. You can go extra slowly there, but definitely don't push anything to make it happen. And now stop that, and we're going to do something a little bit different with the pelvis. So go find 1 o'clock. So from 12, 1 is a little bit forward, and draw a line between 1 o'clock and 7 o'clock. So across, and come back to 1 and go back to 7. Feel if you held your breath to find 7 or to find this line. And the next time you're at 1, find 2 o'clock. So 2 to 8 o'clock, direct line. And a few times 2 to 8, 8 to 2. And now go to find 3 o'clock. So that's just forward and back. We already know that. 4 o'clock, 4 to 10. What are your ribs doing here? The ribs on the floor. The ribs on your left side. How are they helping you? Try not to over effort. Easy breathing. And now come back to a full circle, full clock, and stop at each number. 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. And then change direction. And when you're done with your full circle, you can stop that and roll back to your back. How do you sense your breathing? Have a few more ribs made your breathing more available or just more easy? How does your left side feel? Go to the same side, the right side. And now the same experiment with the shoulder. So have your arm on your side, straight but relaxed, of course. And find 12 o'clock first and then go to 1, just a little bit forward. And then draw a line from 1 to 7. Take your time finding it. Sense what upper ribs might be coming along with that. How your upper ribs might be helping you. 1, 7, continue. How might your shoulder blade be moving in this case? Go to 2 o'clock, 2, directly 8. How is this angle taking your head differently in space? How are your ribs that are touching the floor helping you? 2 to 8. Then find 3 and 9, which is basically forward and back. Make that a straight line. How much is your head involved? How much is your neck involved? Find 4, 4 to 10. What is this angle demanding from you differently? What tiny changes do you need to make? Is your pelvis coming along, helping you? How much more of yourself can you include? Find 5 o'clock and lined to 11 across. What kind of shape is your chest making? If your head is moving to, is it in the same line and the same direction? and 12 and 6. And now do a full circle with your shoulder, stopping a little bit at each number. And add to that the circle of the pelvis, of your pelvis. Simultaneous. Let your neck really be part of the movement. Add the circle of the navel. How might you be using your abdominals differently here? Surely, if one side versus the other of our back or our chest are different, the abdominals are also influenced in such a way. One side working harder than the other. If you need to take a rest at any point, feel free. As you continue doing the circle, feel where your belly poofs out a little bit. At which point would it like to come forward? And stop and just feel your breathing. One more time, take your hip and shoulder circle together. You can change to the other direction if we only did one direction just now. Let your head, neck, and chest really participate together. Enjoy the softness on the right side, helping you. And find a pleasurable way of doing it. Make it feel nice. And one more time, change direction. If you feel like it, or if you want to take a break, you can come and roll on your back. So when you are on your back, feel where your shoulder, let's say your left shoulder and left hip joint are resting, their relationship. Are they more on top of one another, more in a straight line? And the other hip joint and shoulder blade, how do they feel? How is the line between them? Feel everything to the right of your spine. Feel everything to the left of your spine. Feel if some of the spaces behind your knees, behind your back, behind your neck have changed. A little bit more of you come to the floor. Have you found some new ribs? Sense the whole of yourself. And just rest a little bit. And when you're ready, bend your knees and slowly get up.